I believe that Starfield is headed to PlayStation. And yes, I have said this before, but now more than ever, the signs, the clues, the breadcrumbs, the tea leaves, they all point to this becoming a reality. And the recent announcement about a 60 FPS update from Starfield really lands the plane for me, because there is so much that leads up to this point in the history of Starfield. From the Lex Friedman interview with Todd Howard, where he mentioned 30 FPS being something that they're okay with, to Phil Spencer apologizing for the launch of Redfall without 60 FPS, and then the Starfield Direct, followed by a Todd Howard interview where he confirmed that Starfield would be 30 FPS on consoles to maintain fidelity. It's all staring us right in the face, and the 60 FPS update for Starfield ties it all together, and I'm going to tell you how. Now, if you like this content, a live discussion will follow this video. Check for a pinned comment below or the card at the end of this video, and be sure to like and subscribe as well. So, in order to piece this puzzle together for you, we have to go back in time to when Todd Howard dropped the first significant hint, and maybe even soft confirmation, that Starfield would be 30 FPS. On November 29th of 2022, Lex Friedman published an interview where he and Todd Howard discussed everything from Skyrim to Elder Scrolls 6 to Fallout and, finally, Starfield. This was the interview that I referenced many times where I said he could have only been referring to Starfield. Games like Skyrim and Fallout 4 were not being developed at a time where 60 FPS was even a thought for consoles, and here is what he had to say. We let the players have as much agency and do as many things as they can as possible. We will sacrifice some graphic fidelity for that, some speed for that. Traditionally, we're okay with 30 frames a second as long as it looks really good and the simulation is running well and all. Now, this is important to set the stage for Starfield coming to PlayStation, because Todd lays a lot of groundwork for why 30 FPS is okay. And a little side note, the latest update that they're going to add 60 FPS to Starfield, it really hurts the creative decision angle that many gamers try to take with the recent batch of 30 FPS games hitting the Xbox first-party lineup. But anyway, in the same year, 2022, in the summer, Starfield had a gameplay reveal. Now, this was the infamous video where Todd Howard donned another fantastic jacket and he finally let us see Starfield gameplay. And this video was heavily scrutinized. Shadows were inconsistent, frame rate issues actually happened in the video, and other performance issues were apparent. So the 30 FPS debate was alive and well. And somehow, most folks, including myself, we skipped right over the Lex Friedman interview. It wasn't until later that many of us realized, hey, we missed this. He actually told us that Starfield would be 30 FPS. And if Starfield wasn't facing enough of a challenge, with the weight of the Xbox brand seemingly on its shoulders, the Redfall launch increased the pressure and the public scrutiny. What can only be described as a disastrous launch of an obviously incomplete and broken game, Redfall made things significantly harder for Starfield. They even had to ship the physical copies with stickers that stated 60 FPS performance mode not available at launch. Now, this prompted an interview with Phil Spencer and Kinda Funny on their now canceled podcast Xcast. In this interview, he does two things which are incredibly interesting in hindsight. He apologizes for Redfall shipping the way that it did and expresses a commitment to getting the 60 FPS mode added. And here's what he said. But that's not on anybody but us. We have to own that. In terms of our commitment to the game, absolutely, the team at Arcane is taking the near-term feedback. We're still working on the 60 frames per second. We have a good timeline for that. We're committed to getting that done. And we're going to work it on the game. And we're going to continue to work on the game. Now, he also said in this interview that the public would have an answer about Starfield and 60 FPS during the Starfield Direct, which turned out to be half true, as Todd Howard actually answered the question in an interview with IGN after the 45-minute long Starfield Direct. So Phil Spencer apologizes for a game not shipping with 60 FPS, expresses a commitment to get it shipped, and then, when we get our answer about Starfield and 60 FPS, Todd Howard's justification is very helpful in the picture that I'm painting for you. He said the following: it's 4K on the X, it's 1440 on the S, we do lock it at 30 because we want that fidelity, we want all that stuff, we don't want to sacrifice any of it. Now keep in mind, when we read the update from Bethesda about 60 FPS coming to the Xbox Series X, I want you to think back to the justification that Todd has here, because he said more than that. He went on to say, but on the consoles, we do lock it because we prefer the consistency where you're not even thinking about it. He also said, and we don't ever want to sacrifice that experience that makes our games feel really, really special. So now a very clear pattern has emerged. Todd Howard and Bethesda aren't just fine with 30 FPS, as he told Lex Friedman. It's a decision that is defended rather strongly in the IGN interview, stressing things like fidelity, consistency, and not wanting to sacrifice the experience. So, what might have changed? Why would they be updating Starfield now and adding a performance mode? What could have changed? Well, if you haven't been paying attention this year, Xbox has changed. 2024 kicked off with a swirl of rumors that Xbox first-party games would be heading to rival platforms, and Starfield was one of those games. Even before 4 titles were confirmed to be coming by Phil Spencer, we had a prominent Xbox outlet claiming that Starfield was coming to PS5. But more than that, it claimed that Microsoft had made additional investments into PS5 dev kits to support the ongoing development efforts. Remember this key point when we end up looking at those performance mode options in the Starfield update. Remember the dev kits. But these rumors were just the runway to the real show. Phil Spencer does a podcast confirming that 4 games were coming to rival platforms, and then the 4 games are announced later. They don't list them on the podcast. They come later, and they come to PlayStation and Nintendo in very quick succession. More than that, Satya Nadella just announced on an earnings call that 7 of the top 25 most sold games on PlayStation were Xbox-owned property. This signals to both investors and the watching world that Xbox is making good money by bringing their games to PlayStation, which if you're a shareholder, you would likely expect this to be something that is more heavily invested in the future. So, let us turn our attention now to the Starfield latest update, as well as my prediction. Now, the main part of this stems from the performance mode update and the 60 FPS, but I do need to restate. I previously said that I believe Bethesda would use the updates every 6 weeks in 2024 and the Shattered Space DLC to pave the way for a PlayStation 5 version of Starfield. This lines up with the rumor from Xbox era that it would come to PlayStation 5 after the Shattered Space DLC. And I believe the recent update adds to this theory that I have. They did publish a video. It was entitled Starfield May Update. And in this video, they outline great map updates with icons. There are options to customize your experience and difficulty. You can decorate the interior of your ship, as well as brand new footage of the first land vehicle coming to Starfield. Now, while they do make mention of focusing on the Series X players and giving them performance options, the blog post about the update paints a clearer picture. After a bullet point list of quality of life updates coming to the game, they launch right into this section that says new Xbox Series X display settings. And this is where you can see they are actually doing a lot more than just giving you a simple performance mode. First, they are giving a frame rate target option, allowing you to choose between 30, 40, 60, or an uncapped frame rate. That is then when your options actually double. They allow you, after you choose that, to choose whether to prioritize visuals or performance. This essentially means that every frame rate target can choose between visuals or performance. This means you have 8 possible modes to choose from. Now, they do recommend that if you pick performance, if you pick 60, you should pick performance or above. So basically, if you're like, I want 60 or above, they say you should pick performance. But the careful observer will notice something. This sounds an awful lot like the large amount of options on first-party PS5 titles. And if you remember earlier in the video, the rumor that PS5 dev kits were invested in for a Starfield PS5 port, you might see this performance update in the way that I see it. This is prep work for the PS5, and with the uncapped option for frame rate, maybe even the PS5 Pro. And when you see this level of update given to the player, you have to remember everything Todd Howard said. Why would you suddenly let just Xbox Series X owners have this choice and make those sacrifices to fidelity, especially when we have it on good authority from Xbox themselves that the majority of Xbox consoles this generation are the Series S, largely due to Microsoft voluntarily constraining the Series X production and making more Series S consoles. Why would a first-party Xbox studio suddenly put such an emphasis on giving 8 performance modes to the smallest slice of the audience? Another thing to observe, with this update, Starfield will be the first game from a first-party studio to not have performance parity with respect to 60 FPS on both the Series X and the Series S consoles. All of their games up to this point have either launched at 30 or at 60. And when a 60 FPS update comes along like it did for Redfall, it comes to both the Series X and S. For a while, many theorized that there might be a parity clause just for first-party studios at Xbox, essentially stating that if you make a first-party game, it has to be 60 on both or 30 on both. You can't have 60 on one and not the other. Which begs the question, why would Xbox and Bethesda suddenly be okay with the larger portion of their console base getting an inferior version of what is currently their most popular and talked about game? Something even Tom Warren from The Verge questioned. He said, "It's interesting that Bethesda has only mentioned a Starfield 60 FPS mode for Xbox Series X. That would suggest the Xbox Series S won't be getting this mode and will have a separate version." This is something that I harped on when the Digital Foundry breakdown of Starfield landed. There was very little visual differences between the game on either of the consoles, which made me, as a Series X owner, feel like I got less because of the Series S. Well, it seems that shoe is changing feet. Once this update is live, Series S owners will feel like they are getting less, because they are. And if you've considered everything I've outlined, the rumors, the willingness to put Xbox games on rival platforms, creative reasons that were keeping Starfield at 30 FPS, apparently those reasons have evaporated into thin air. Phil Spencer apologizing about Redfall, committing to get 60 FPS added, and Satya Nadella boasting about sales on PlayStation. Well, all those dots form a line, and that line leads straight to PlayStation. If smaller or older titles like Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves are making such a splash, imagine owning a property as popular as Starfield and not trying to sell it on the larger console platform, especially in light of Bethesda's history on PlayStation. Skyrim had a larger player base on PlayStation than Xbox. Fallout 4 had a massive amount of sales on PlayStation. VG Charts estimates that Fallout 4 sold approximately 8.5 million copies on the PlayStation 4. And if the lifetime sales of Fallout 4 of 20 million from the FTC documents, if that's accurate, that means 42%, almost half of the lifetime sales of Fallout 4 have been on the PlayStation platform. That's an awful lot of potential customers who like Bethesda games. To which many have said, well, with all the hate that was hurled at Starfield from PlayStation fans, would they actually buy it? The truth is, most of the hate hurled at Starfield by PlayStation fans on Twitter and YouTube doesn't really represent what the general public thinks. I have said many times that I have people in my friend circles who they're not really big gamers, and even they have heard about Starfield. And if you watch the May update video about Starfield, it's clear they are targeting some of the very specific rough edges of the game. If they continue to do that and create a 2.0 moment for Starfield with Shattered Space, similar to games like Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky, the redemption arc of Starfield will begin. So in light of all that, I think Starfield is coming to PlayStation, and this update is just one more piece of the puzzle. But that's just what I think. Now it's time to hear what you think. And you can do that in a comment below, or you can join me on my live stream. We pin a comment below with the link. There's also usually a card right here that you can click, and the video should redirect as well. I'd love to see you over there. Be sure to hit like, share, and subscribe.